It is time for a tier list and best decks update using objective analytics, including win rates for Pokemon Pocket. Unlike normal analytics, we will be including Asian events that are not normally ran on English platforms. It has been about 1 week since the Space-Time Smackdown Dialga and Palkia pack has been released. And the burning question is, of the two, which is the best deck? Well, what happened is neither. So let's hop right into the tier list. We'll start off at tier 3, and then honorable mentions will be tier 4 and below as we work our way up. So right away you can see Palkia's at tier 3, but we'll first look at Pikachu, which what used to be one of the best decks in the game. What happened with Pikachu? Pikachu has fallen from its former high-tier status. No, the deck previously relied on frequent retreats to mitigate prize loss and maintained a full bench of low HP Pokemon. However, with the introduction of Cyrus, it now struggles to stay relevant. Despite this, Pikachu has gained some new tools, including Pachirisu with its latest expansion. Thank you, Bella VGC. So the main card focus here is Cyrus. We could just bring this card up. This is definitely a meta changer. And as I said in my initial review of this card will steal games, and it's stealing the spotlight away from a deck like Pikachu. Absolute madness, as you're able to switch away one of your opponent's bench Pokemon that has damage onto it to the active spot. Where normally we had Sabrina, where the opponent could choose what Pokemon they wanted to switch out from the bench. Now in the TCG, they have a card similar to Cyrus, but the bench Pokemon doesn't even require to have damage on it. It's called Boss Orders, and you just choose whatever bench Pokemon you want, switch it to the active spot. Now, of course, we're talking about Pokemon Pocket, and thankfully we do not have a card like that, but still, Cyrus is incredibly contentious to the point where I'm seeing Reddit threads of people saying they're not having fun dueling anymore. So will we potentially see our first ever ban list of Pokemon Pocket, or maybe a card like Cyrus will at least be limited to one or possibly be banned in the future? Even if it were to be limited to one, I think a lot of decks are already just using it at one. So let's go back on over to Pikachu. What is going on here? Are there any updates with the deck? It looks like 36% are not using Pachirisu, but otherwise the rest are. So what is the new update to the deck here with this card? What's so good about this? The Pachirisu has Sparking Gadget, which is with 2 lightning energy, going to deal 40 plus damage, and it will deal 40 plus more damage if you have a Pokemon tool attached to it, thus 80 damage total. Now, compared with Pikachu EX, Pikachu's Circle Circuit for 2 lightning energy dealt 90 damage, but it required more of a setup. You gotta have 3 lightning energy Pokemon on the bench to get that full 90. Otherwise, you are only going to be dealing 60 damage. And the Pokemon tools to supplement your Pachirisu would be something like a Rocky Helmet, which would reflect 20 damage, or a Giant Cape to give you an additional 20 health. And then combo that up with a card like Potion, and you get even more use out of the cape. So let's look at a recent sample deck list here. Here's one without the Pachirisu, and then we're going to look at one with the Pachirisu. We can also, so this is with Pachirisu, top 32 of a 148 player event. This is a good example on how the deck is played. And even though they're losing to a card like Cyrus, they are of course using Cyrus themselves. Also, we have some new support through Dawn a lot of decks are using, where you can move an energy from your bench Pokemon to your active Pokemon if you had to, let's say, retreat it when it started getting low. Now, moving on from Pikachu, well, we can also see the win rates for its top decks here. It has an absolute abysmal win rate against Darkrai EX Magnezone. Holy moly, 20%, that is unheard of. And Pikachu used to be one of the best decks. And then Celebi, also a horde win rate, and also not doing too well against Weavile. Now, Pikachu historically has done quite well against Gyarados, 71% against Gyarados, and 58% against Palkia. Now, even though it has a positive, good win rate against Gyarados, Gyarados right now is considered an overall better deck because against every other deck, Gyarados is just better. So they don't even have to really worry about Pikachu because of how much Pikachu has fallen off against what would be the most popular and prevalent deck, Darkrai EX Magnezone, which we'll be getting to that in a bit. Let's hop on over back to the tier list here. Let's look at Exeggutor EX. Exeggutor's primary partner is Venusaur, allowing it to leverage its Stage 1 status and deal damage with just 1 grass energy to apply early pressure. Standard variation. This version includes Venusaur, as Exeggutor is a durable grass Pokemon capable of tanking hits. The variation in testing, another build explores the use of Victory Bell to lure basic Pokemon from the bench to the active position, enabling players to pick off the final points needed to secure victory. Overall, Exeggutor's synergy with Venusaur provides a solid foundation, while innovative strategies are being tested to enhance its effectiveness in matches. Again, thank you, Bella VGC. And here is the sample breakdown, where it looks like Yanmega is going up in usage to pretty much replace the Venusaur. And then we have a little bit of Celebi down here. As we could look at the Exeggutor itself, very simple, 1 grass energy, flip a coin, and it deals 40 damage. And if you get a heads, it deals an additional 40 damage for a total 80. And we have that nice 160 health boost. And the fact that this is only a stage 1 evolution, that is an advantage over having to evolve twice for something like a Charizard instead. And what really helped out for evolution type decks is a card like Pokemon Communication. A great boost in consistency, as you could choose a Pokemon in your hand, switch it with any random Pokemon in your deck. And a nuanced detail to this is, based on the wording, you cannot receive the Pokemon you return back in the deck, where in a game like Yu-Gi-Oh!, you shuffle a card back into the deck and then draw a card. There's a chance you're going to draw that same card you returned back. So if that's actually true with how the card works, I know some other cards are written in a specific way and they don't really mean exactly that. Like, for example, there's a card that says choose 2 Pokemon, but you could still choose up to 2 Pokemon, as it's not worded that way. But you can let me know in the comments, have any of you ever received the same Pokemon you returned back? Now, of course, you have a second copy of that same Pokemon. There's a chance to grab that. But I'm talking about the one you returned back. Now, moving on from that, we'll see some of the deck lists here. Sorry for that yappage right there. Yanmega is being boosted in an Exeggutor deck. Let's read this real quick. What's really good with the Yanmega is it's no grass energy whatsoever. At 140 health, stage 1 evolution, 3 colorless energy for air slash 120 damage, where you have to discard a random energy from this Pokemon. And let's see some other variations here. We have the Yanmega. Here is a Venomoth variant. I'm just opening up in a new tab real quick. What else? Oh, it looks like we have the healing variant with the Celebi. Sure. Wow, there's so many different ways to play this. You could even play this with Magnezone. There are too many versions of this deck. So we got the Venomoth here. I'm not going to be spending too much time on this because the Exeggutor deck breakdown is really just all over the place. It's just a rogue deck that's doing quite well with random variations. Now, a card that can be used in any deck you want is the Shaman, Flagrant Flower Garden, which will, once during your turn, heal 10 damage from each of your Pokemon, and you don't need grass energy in order to use this. I've seen this even be used in a deck like Charizard. And then let's click on the other deck list here of another tournament top. How is Magnezone used in a grass deck? Well, Magnezone is probably the biggest meta change from this new pack, where it's essentially a colorless energy Pokemon. Even though it says it requires a lightning energy and you have to discard a lightning energy to activate Thunder Blast for 110 damage at our 140 health, you do not play lightning energy with Magnezone, because what you're going to do is the Magneton, if you're playing the other version of Magneton, I guess this version's playing Magneton I normally don't see. This is actually quite interesting. So for this version, they are in fact not playing the crazy broken way. Let me show you the broken way the deck's played, and you're going to see it in a lot of different decks, and that's through this Magneton, where Volt Charge, once during your turn, you may take a lightning energy from your energy zone and attach it to this Pokemon. Thus, your deck does not have to play lightning at all. So the turn you evolve into Magneton, you're going to gain a lightning energy. And right before you evolve into Magnezone, you will at least gain your second lightning energy. Now, ideally, the Magneton itself will provide up to 3, maybe 4 energy onto your Pokemon before you go through with that evolution, then start attacking with Magnezone. And you're going to see a lot of top-tier decks using that play. Let's now move on to another deck, as we have, I think, an exciting one, Lucario. Lucario is here. Oh my. Lucario is an easy inclusion in fighting box decks, which performed very well during the MI with the release of Marshadow. Lucario's plus 20 to plus 40 damage boost makes it a highly effective addition. The main attacker remains Marshadow, Primeape, and Aerodactyl, providing strong offense for just 2 energy. Even with just one Lucario set up, Mankey could deal 50 damage for 1 energy, surpassing the Farfetch'd D threshold. So that is a great thing to note, that you could have 2 Lucarios up at the same time on your bench for the fighting coach ability of very passively, without needing fighting energy. It states, attacks used by your fighting Pokemon deal an additional plus 20 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. There aren't a lot of abilities in the game right now that stack with each other like Lucario. Hitmonlee is a crucial 1 energy attacker because Primeape/Marshadow plus Lucario's boost caps it at 120 damage. Hitmonlee helps finish off key targets like Palkia, Yanmega, Dialga, Darkrai, Weavile, and more. So let's see the breakdown here. This is how the deck is normally being played. We have Pokemon communication up here to help with the Lucario evolving, get it out as soon as possible to start boosting up your fighting damage attacks. Now we can look at some recent deck lists here. We have a sample top 32, and what's catching my eye is 2 different first place deck lists. We're going to look at that. Let's open up first place, that's looking good. Was there another first place? Another first place. So 3 first place deck lists here. Lucario first place of an almost 150 player event. For this deck, we are using Marshadow, but in addition to that, we're using Rampardos with a holy moly 1 fighting energy for 130 damage head smash, which will get boosted up to a 150 damage attack or even 170 with a double Lucario combo. If your opponent's Pokemon is knocked out by damage from this attack, this Pokemon also does 50 damage to itself, but it is at 150 health, and the big downside is this is a stage 2 evolution, but as you can see in this deck list, we are playing Pokemon Communication at 2 to help with the deck being more consistent. And you would be thinking with this card, it essentially 3-shots itself, right? 150 health, you knock out 3 Pokemon, but you would then win the whole game. You could use Giant Cape to help mitigate some of the damage it does to itself, as the opponent will also be dealing additional damage. I would say the goal with this card is to not 2-shot itself before you're able to win the entire game. And yep, Hitmonchan is a nice 1 energy jab boosted up by Lucario, and with the 80 base health, that is looking good. Let's look at another first place deck list, as we have another one, a 55-player event first place, a more basic version of the deck. We got the Marshadow, which has the revenge ability, of course, if you didn't know about that. If any of your Pokemon were knocked out by damage from an attack during your opponent's last turn, this deals an additional 60 damage, which would be 100 plus 120 into 140 damage with Lucario. And then we have the Hitmonlee. Stretch Kick, dealing 30 damage to 1 of your opponent's benched Pokemon. A very popular card indeed. And then we got the double Giant Cape up in here, double Cyrus. Ooh, this looks like a really annoying deck to play against. Let's see the last first place deck, and it's very similar to the last one we just looked at. Same thing. Hitmonlee, Marshadow with Lucario seems to be the more standard way to play it. Let's now move on to another deck. We got Weavile EX. What is this? Weavile EX, we have some win rate stats here. Weavile can be played alongside either Weezing, Spiritomb, or Farfetch, but all variants include Darkrai to apply early damage before Weavile is set up. The deck focuses on heavy chip damage that quickly adds up, wearing down opponents over time, says Bella VGC. So very quickly, what are the win rates? It has an incredible win rate against Mewtwo EX. And you know what? I should just get to it right now. A lot of you may be wondering, what happened to Mewtwo? Well, if I zoom in and we scroll on down, Mewtwo is, wait, where is Mewtwo on the tier list? I think Mewtwo has completely fallen off. Ain't no freaking way. Mewtwo is gone from the game. That's an absolute travesty. What happened here? Well, if we bring up the Mewtwo EX breakdown, we could see that it's not doing well against the top deck. It's doing horrible against Gyarados, also not doing well against Palkia. So we have 2 brand new top tier decks where Mewtwo is getting absolutely clapped up by them. That is really unfortunate for many people that went all in onto Mewtwo. as it was a very cool way to get that 150 side drive attack, with the downside being that you're also at a base 150 health, with the Gardevoir helping supplement your Mewtwo, dealing that 150 damage every single turn. It's just no longer good enough. And you're also weak to dark damage. So a dark deck is going to clap you up. And then a powerful deck like Palkia's got a 150 damage attack, which we're going to get to in a bit. Also one-shotting Mewtwo. So yes, not even on the tier list. Mewtwo is pretty much gone from the meta, and it's really sad to see. Now back on over to Weavile. We have a bad matchup with Weavile against Celebi, Darkrai EX, and Palkia EX. So I also think we skipped on over the no, we didn't. Okay, so let's see. Deck stats here. What is this? Darkrai, if you don't know about this card, every time you attach a Darkness Energy, you're going to deal 20 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. But the star of the show within this deck is Weavile EX specifically, with the ability Scratching Nails for 30 damage at 140 health. Now, without reading the ability, that's not so good, but the ability states that if your opponent's active Pokemon has damage on it, this deals an additional 40 damage. That's going to be 70 damage, which would then be 90 damage to a Mewtwo, which will assume it already has 20 damage dealt to it through the Darkrai EX. That is essentially how this deck is set up. You are able to easily afford the Scratching Nails with just one darkness as you continually apply your other dark energy onto Darkrai to forever keep on chipping them down for 20 damage at a time. The Spiritomb is also good for chipping, as it chips the entire field. It is a basic Pokemon with one colorless to deal 10 damage to all of your opponent's Pokemon, or you could get some early big damage with the Farfetch'd D, Leak Slap them up for 40 damage at a time. So let's look at a sample deck list here. Here's a top 32 of a recent event. And I think I'll grab the top 8 deck list here of a 300-player event. How about that? The most recent thing we have here. So looking pretty much closely to what the deck breakdown was. And now you have a good view of what the deck does and what it looks like. Let's keep on going. Now, we have Palkia EX. Palkia is split into multiple different decks. So this is not the full picture of what Palkia EX is doing. We will, in fact, let's bring up all the Palkias. How about that? Palkia, we have Palkia Starmie, regular Palkia. Yep, okay, so by multiple, we got 2 of them. So the Palkia EX version is going to essentially just be without Starmie. And the Starmie version is not as good as Palkia. So we'll start off with the Palkia Starmie version. All successful Palkia decks currently share one common theme: you manify, ramp it up. The Starmie variant, Palkia acts as a tank, allowing the tank for Staryu until it evolves into the Starmie, and then the free retreat cost of Starmie then enables Palkia to switch back in and make use of the energy later again. So as you heard there, at that 150 health, you're going to be tanking, and then the Starmie, all it needs is 2 water energy to start Hydro Splashing for 90 damage, and then when needed, retreat back to your damaged Palkia EX, which hopefully then has enough energy to finish off your opponent with a massive Dimensional Storm for 150 damage. As we saw earlier, this deck claps up a deck like Mewtwo because that perfect 150 damage. And it dealing 20 damage to the bench is also insane, because if they're waiting with their Mewtwo on the bench, you smack them for 20, and then they were to attach it with a giant cape, it does not matter. You'll completely go right through it with the Dimensional Storm. Even the Slash, poking down the opponent for 30 damage at a time while you're building up enough to do a Dimensional Storm, is a big deal in comparison to a card like Gyarados, which only does 140 damage. You can't chip down the opponent with Gyarados. It's just that 141 and done. Now, what else are we using here? We have the Power of Leaf, which could help retreat back your Palkia for free instead of paying the full retreat cost for 2. So that's a definite reason why we see the Leaf being boosted up in here. And again, this is not the better version of Palkia. The better version is without Starmie. But despite that, we could open up a second place deck list here to take a little gander on how the deck is being played. Looking quite standard compared to the deck breakdown. And let's now move on to the better version, better performing at the moment, which is just regular Palkia EX. We could check out the win rates here. It has a positive win rate against Mewtwo, as we said, and does quite well against Celebi, also quite well against Weavile. It does have that horrible matchup against Magnezone, and I think this alone is why this is not the best deck. This should be the best deck. It's a crazy effect, being able to slash for 30 and then deal 150, and also having the effect to Manify to choose up to 2 Pokemon on your bench, give it water energy, and the Vaporeon being able to move your water energy as much as you want within a turn. That means within just 2 turns, if you are going second, so on the 4th turn of the duel, you could activate your Dimensional Storm despite only having 2 turns of activating your energy, thanks to the Manify comboed up with Vaporeon combo. That's absolute insanity. So the big reason why this is not top tier is the 1-card Magnezone. Well, to be fair, Magnezone and Darkrai at the same time. Why is that? Well, let's do basic math. We're at 150 health with the Palkia, and the Darkrai is going to have a dark energy attached to it, which will trigger the effect to inflict 20 damage. So Palkia is now at 130. Well, they then have Magnezone, which does 110. But wait, we are weak to lightning energy. So that 110 becomes 130, plus the 20 from the Darkrai is a perfect 150 damage one-shot onto the Palkia through the Magna freaking zone. That is nuts. It is definitely a huge downer for this deck. I think a lot of people are upset about that. Overall, I think people are asking for Magnezone to be relooked at, possibly hit by some sort of a ban list maybe. I guess we're deep enough into Pokemon Pocket with our 3rd set where finally people are saying, hey, I think we need some balancing onto this game instead of just new cards. Now, do I have an expectation for a ban list to ever happen in this game? I don't, because there's no ranked mode, there's no world championship. There is nothing from the devs showing that they actually care about competitive play. They're pretty much just saying, play the game casually, collect and have fun. The dueling is just for fun. It's not for try-hard sweating. But despite that, I don't care. I would still like to be try-hard sweating and following the meta for what's good. So just an unfortunate circumstance of Palkia where I think the devs overlooked the power of Magnezone overall. We can see here some of them playing Articuno in addition to the Vaporeon here. We can look at a recent deck list, a 2nd place, a 2nd place, and a 1st place. How about that? Plus the sample deck list here. What's it looking like? We got the Vaporeon with the giant capes. We have, we got the Vaporeon again with giant capes. And then we have played with Magnezone. This is wild. Water and lightning combined because, again, Magnezone is a colorless Pokemon. You don't actually put in lightning energy, as we have the correct Magneton in this version of the deck to supply it. And then Druddigon, also, you do not put in fire energy to play Druddigon. It's colorless. You do not put any energy onto it whatsoever. Just water energy for this deck, and you are good. And I'm quite surprised this got 1st place. It just really shows, wow, the power of Magnezone. This is essentially a Darkrai EX Magnezone deck, but we took out Darkrai for Palkia. This actually is getting me quite interested. Maybe I should try this out. 177 players, 1st place. Okay, no, I did not know this existed. Now, we're going to move out of Tier 3 into Tier 2. We're going to start off with Charizard EX. What is going on here? We could look at the win rates for his top decks very quickly. It's got the best win rate against Celebi EX. Well, grass gets burnt by fire, makes sense. And it's got the worst win rate against Gyarados. Well, water beats fire. Yeah, wow, okay, rock, paper, scissors. Quite interesting. And then it also has a bad win rate against Greninja, Darkrai EX, and unfortunately a bad win rate against the most popular and prevalent top tier deck being the Darkrai EX Magnezone. Now, let's see what a sample deck list is looking like. And what I could say right here is that Charizard received a very nice boost from the latest pack that just came out. As we could see, with the Pokemon communication, making the deck a lot more consistent, as you can now dig for your Charmeleon or Charizard by returning a Pokemon in your hand back in the deck to then grab another randomly. And then also, with the high cost of the Charizard EX being insulated through the Moltres helping out by giving you fire energy on the bench, we have another way to help us get that 4 energy through the Dawn. So if you end up getting a late Charizard and you're switching your Pokemon around, you could use Dawn to move a fire energy from, let's say, your initial Moltres even. This can allow you to tag into your Charizard earlier than you expected to remove the Infernal Dance Fire energy onto the Charizard after also giving it energy through the Inferno Dance, which maybe you got unlucky because you do have to flip coins to give your fire energy to that Charizard. for that massive Crimson Storm 200 damage attack. And then, of course, we got a random amount of cards here, random Cape, random Leaf. Not playing 2 of these, though, in the majority of the builds, but you definitely want to be maximizing your Pokemon communication. Now, let's look at a sample deck list. Also, to point out, some of them, 22% playing the Shaman, 78% not playing it, where you're going to heal for 10 damage every single turn. It's like a forever potion. Where's the potion at? Potion right here. But potion is more popularly played. So let's see. Top 16 in this recent example is a first place deck list here. Okay, let's open this up. Charizard EX, first place in a 190 player event, looking super basic. And if you ever want to be checking out first place deck lists all over the place, just click on first place, and you could even look at the condensed view to see the recent, or just scroll down to see the recent. You could even click on new cards, or just go by the last week to see what decks have been winning the entire event. That's a cooler view to see some stuff on what's going on. Sometimes some random rogue decks like these Pachirisu EX deck gets first place. And what's interesting about this deck, out of nowhere, it's a single Pachirisu deck. What? Look at that. The Pokemon tools. So what I'm trying to encourage you right now is you don't have to solely focus on the tier list, because there are random mad lads out there pulling out crazy tricks and decks like this that are not super top tier, but then they're able to win an entire event. Now, it was just a 64-player event, but still, this is a great accomplishment, especially with a solo Pokemon. And if you're unsure on how this works in Pokemon Pocket, you are guaranteed 100% going to open up this Pokemon, where in the Pokemon TCG physical card game, you'd have to continually mulligan over and over and over and then start the duel at a disadvantage, but not in Pokemon Pocket. So let's go back on over to the tier list, as we now have Gyarados. Gyarados, a deck we continually saw within the win rates of many other deck lists. It was also a super top tier deck of the previous pack. What is this? 2 different builds are performing relatively well, says Bella VGC. One build focuses on Druddigon as a tank to buy time, while the other utilizes Manify as a ramp tool for faster setup, similar to Palkia EX. We have the win rate versus top decks, and interestingly, Palkia is a bad matchup for this deck. Okay, well, what does Palkia do? It slashes for 30, so now Gyarados is at 150, and then it has the main attack of Palkia dealing that 150 dimensional, what's it called? Let's read it from here. We could type in here, Palkia EX, Dimensional Storm for 150. As you can see, both attacks adding up to 180 to clap up that Gyarados. And as you can see here on the breakdown, we got the Druddigon, also the Manify strategy, and we could see what the deck does well against. Against Mewtwo, it does well against Celebi, and also does well against Charizard. 60% win rate plus across the board on them, almost 70% against Mewtwo. Now, if we go on down here, if you want to, you could type in a card like Druddigon, and then you could have it include or not include, or you could have or of a search. So here, if I click not, here are all decks not using Druddigon if you're sick of that tanking strategy. So first of all, we do have a Druddigon version here. As you can see, Druddigon backed up by Greninja, continually inflicting 20 damage to chip them down, and then finish off with the Rampaging Whirlpool for 140 damage. And Gyarados at 180 health is massive, especially for being just a single one-stage evolution Pokemon. So looking at the non-Druddigon versions of the deck, we have a first place I'm going to open up in a new tab. We could then look at the ones with Druddigon. There's no oh, here's another first place deck list right there. So we're going to compare both first place deck lists. This is going to be with Vaporeon and Glaceon. Glaceon in the build. That's interesting. Flip a coin of heads. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. Okay, Glaceonin. Where the actual Pokemon game, it would be Frozen. I don't think Frozen is a mechanic in the TCG unless they added that when I didn't know about it. We have a single Pokemon communication here, Manify to help boost up the energy onto your bench, and then the Vaporeon helping you to move it around to get that very quick Rampaging Whirlpool. I would say this is going to be the more fun way to play the deck instead of sitting on a Druddigon. Here's the Druddigon variant where it got first place. We chip them down with Greninja if they're going to refuse to attack into Druddigon, and when we want to, we could leaf the Druddigon back to the bench to then whip out the Gyarados when ready, and then Rampage Whirlpool it up for the win. Let's go back on over to the tier list now to what do we have? Celebi. What is this? Celebi EX breakdown. We have 2 different Celebi decks that are currently seeing play, according to Bella VGC. We have the classic Celebi Superior play. This traditional build focuses on Celebi alongside Superior, or I should say Superior, with the option to include Exeggutor as a tank. And then we also have the Exeggutor Magnezone tank build, where Magnezone's put in anywhere you want to play it. This variant will use Exeggutor as the main tank, allowing all grass energy to be placed on the Celebi while simultaneously charging Magneton's ability for Magnezone, which that is so insane that they allowed that to get through. What the heck were they thinking? So here are the deck stats here, where we got the Celebi being played. The majority of decks playing just one Celebi. Wow. Where the other half, of course, 47% playing it at 2. Interesting. We got a little bit of Mew here. Let's see what is good. So we said the 2 different strategies was the Superior. We're going to be looking at decks with it and without it. So Superior, this is going to be with it. Do we have any recent super tops? We have a 2nd place victory here and a top 4. Let's take an individual look at that. So what's really good about the Superior is each grass energy attached to the Celebi is going to be providing 2 grass energy, and this effect doesn't stack unlike something like a Lucario. And what's really crazy about this effect is it gives you so many more additional coin flips on the powerful bloom ability of Celebi, which states for just 2 energy, flip a coin for each energy attached to this Pokemon, and then deal 50 damage for each heads. So if you have 2 grass energies onto this, that is 4 coin flips thanks to the Superior, which would be an average of 100 damage with a chance to do up to 200 damage, but also a chance to deal 0 damage. Now, we have a little bit of Cyrus here. The communication, I would think, is very important for this deck to help set up that Superior as soon as possible while you're tanking it up with the Exeggutor. This got 2nd place of a 128-player event. Let's move on over to another one. Top 4 in the 148-player event. Very similar to what we looked at. Let's now look at without Superior. If we see here, we have a 1st place deck list. Whoops. First place. Let's look at both of them. 1st place. Wow. They're just more support cards. We still the same as Superior, but just 1 Celebi and tank up with Exeggutor. What should be noted with grass decks is they have the ever so powerful Erica, which could heal for 50 damage onto your grass Pokemon. That is massive. So I guess we Rocky Helmet onto the Exeggutor, continually heal it with Erica as we smash them to death with a Tropical Swing every single turn. And once we're done with the Tropical Swing, because it's only 1 grass energy, we just endlessly on that bench continually supply a never-ending cycle of grass energy for a super boosted Celebi, powerful bloom attack. And even without the Superior, I'm assuming this is going to get quite large. Very nice. Turning the Exeggutor into a Druddigon. I like that idea. What about this version? This one is not using Rocky Helmet. As I was thinking that was such a nice strategy, but nonetheless, we do have Mew in addition to the Exeggutor. Again, a single copy of Celebi. And the more I think about it, the more this makes sense. Celebi is supposed to be on the bench, and it's taking up all of your grass energy. So why would you want a 2nd Celebi? You can't afford to have it. And if you don't need to open up with Celebi, instead you're going to want the Exeggutor or the Mew here, then it's not that important to have this on your very first turn. You could Pokemon Communication for it, you could Pokeball for it, and then just throughout the duel, just continually build up that grass energy where a 2nd copy of Celebi is just dead. Very nice. Let's see what else we have here. We have the win rates for its top decks. It's got the best win rate, 82% against Weavile. Oh my Jesus. A 30% win rate against Charizard, though, 32% win rate versus Gyarados, 41% against Palkia EX. Let's go back on over to the tier list. And we had Charizard at 46 power level, and the power levels are essentially going to be scaled based off of how many players are in a single event, and it's going to take about the top 30% top cut of every single event. So if it's a 1,000 player event, it's going to be worth more points versus a 100 player event and all that stuff, etc. Now, let's see. Darkrai EX Greninja. What is going on here? With the new set, Darkrai is performing very well. And unsurprisingly, Cyrus is proving to be a strong addition to the Darkrai decks. We just heard from Bella VGC, who is also stating this right now, that the Cyrus is a big reason why Pikachu has completely fallen off. And also from me, I'm telling you, a lot of people are upset about this card. Maybe you could echo that sentiment in the comments. Is Cyrus ruining the fun of Pokemon Pocket for you? What can they do about this card? Just release better strategies that are not affected as much? Or it's just a once and done, we can't take this back, and Pokemon Pocket dueling is forever going to be, I guess, more stressful? You tell me. Cyrus helps secure knockouts, complementing Darkrai's playstyle, which relies heavily on chip damage. Greninja and Druddigon is more reliant on Cyrus for securing the knockouts. So here is the build. This initially was the theory-crafted way to play Darkrai EX because people did not understand how broken the Magnezone actually was. So what's this going to do is every single turn, we're going to equip the Dark Energy onto the Darkrai to inflict 20 damage to the opponent's Pokemon, in addition to Greninja. Now, when you activate a Pokemon attack, your turn's over. But if you activate a Pokemon ability, you still have the rest of your turn. So we're going to use Nightmare Aura of the Darkrai EX in addition to the Water Shuriken of the Greninja to continually chip for 40 damage every turn. Now, it's worth noting the Darkrai EX can only chip away at the opponent's active Pokemon, where the Greninja could chip a Pokemon on the bench and then pull it to the forefront with a Cyrus. And this, while you're getting chipped to death with Greninja and Darkrai on the bench, they're sitting on a Druddigon, which guess what else it does? It chips you to death if you attack into it. We see a Mad Lad, 10% using Rocky Helmet at 1? Ain't no way. So I guess the Druddigon will be dealing 40 damage if you dare to attack into it as they chip you away with Greninja and Darkrai. That is just too funny. So let's see some sample decks here. Let's also look at the, there is a win rate on another page. I'm going to show you that in a bit. Get ready for that. So here's a sample deck, looking good. We got Kangaskhan, which you could be using as a tank instead of your Druddigon. This is going to have a Dizzy Punch. So if you're sick of your opponent just stalling and not attacking your Druddigon, this is where the Kangaskhan is a more aggressive version of the Druddigon, where you just punch every turn for 30 plus damage. And then here you go. That is the list there. Let's see any super tops. We got a top 4 over there. Let's bring up this top 4 deck list, and it's very similar to what we just looked at. So if you want, you could look at the versions with Druddigon, or you could look at it without Druddigon. So here are all the tops with it, and here are all the tops without it. Very nice. Let's keep on going to another deck. What is up next is Marshadow at 66 power level. What is going on here? Marshadow, which we talked about earlier with the Lucario. So I guess taking out the Lucario makes Marshadow a better deck. That is quite unfortunate. I think it's because we're putting in room for the Magnezone. So the Marshadow, again, Revenge, is going to deal 100 damage if one of your Pokemon got knocked out. So you're going to very efficiently, instead of setting up a Lucario, just right away get Hitmonlee in for 30 damage to their bench Pokemon, and then you're going to avenge it with the Marshadow. If not, you're going to then swap in with Magnezone, and if you're catching what's going on here, nothing is an EX Pokemon. So it's like round 1, Hitmonlee, round 2, Marshadow, and then the final Pokemon. You're the Elite Four with this deck. Magnezone's going to be Thunder Blasting you for 110 damage every turn, which we're, as we're continually self-supplying the Magneton with the Volt Charge, we don't have to use any energy on the Magnezone itself. All the energy will just be on the 3 energy across the board of Hitmonlee and Marshadow, with the Magnezone building itself up on the bench through the Magneton. Very cool. Interesting. So another version of the deck, instead of using Magnezone, you have the option to instead play Rampardos, that is, Rampardos. It does 130 head smash damage, where we talked about this is dealing more, of course, with the Lucario, but 130 is already a lot of damage. No Giovanni in this deck list, but get smashing for 130, then 50 back to yourself. And again, you got to note that this is not an EX Pokemon. So if this kills itself, or they take this out because you're self-inflicting damage, it's just 1 point for the opponent. And you also have Double Cyrus here to pull out. And then, of course, if you're going to play a Stage 2 Pokemon, you're going to have to auto-include the Pokemon communication to make your deck that much more consistent. I gotta say, I think it's a huge letdown that the Lucario version is worse tournament performance of what's going on here. Yeah, you would think that Lucario makes the deck better, but it's actually dragging it down. I guess it's too slow because the Lucario, yeah, I don't know. That's kind of sus, huh? What's going on with the tournament players here? You know, I'm just looking at the objective analytics here. We have a top 8 deck with the Rampardos, and if you don't want to play the Rampardos and you want to play the Magnezone instead, we could type in Rampardos, and then we could look at the decks not using it. So we can highlight this. Of course, they're going to be playing Magnezone. Will any of them not be playing the Magnezone? And very soon, just like on the Yu-Gi-Oh websites, we're going to have an engine filter right next to all of the decks on the top decks page and the deck breakdowns, so you can much more easily see how the deck is being played. That is coming soon. Believe me, our top tier developers have been working on it for a good while now. Now, the final deck. So first of all, what the heck? Where is tier 1? Ain't no way. Well, if we do the calculator here, the special number is 110, and this is out of 700 tournament topping deck lists. And of course, I said we're scaling it based off of how many decks, how many players are in an event. So let's do the calculator, because the tiers themselves are quite objective. So if we look at this, we type in 110 divided by 700. So essentially, if you are about 15% of the meta, we'll just say round it up, 16%. If you are 16% of the meta, so imagine a big pizza pie and 16% of it is a single deck of the meta, that is what we are considering to be tier 1. So if we were to compare this tier list, and I think 16% is quite generous. If we were to look at, let's say, a site like Yu-Gi-Oh! Meta, and we go on the tier list here, look at this. Maybe you'll be like, wow, that game's unbalanced, and maybe you have a point, but 46% of the meta being this deck type called Ryzeal, 20% being Malice. So if this were the Pokemon tier list, these two would be considered tier 1 decks. If we go to the Japanese events, I guess it's more balanced over there, where just according, I guess even on the Pokemon tier list, you'd have 3 tier 1 decks, as Ryzeal, Blue Eyes, and Malice would all be tier 1. Now, I would extend the question to all of you. Would you like me to lower this threshold so that tier 1 is separated more distinctly, and maybe it's easier for decks to be tier 1? So if we do the calculator, let's say we do 100 divided by 700. If that's the new threshold for tier 1, it would be once a deck's about 14% of the meta, that's when it becomes tier 1. So what am I even yapping about? What's going on? Why is there no tier 1 deck at the threshold of 16% though? Well, what happens in Pokemon, the meta of Pokemon, is Darkrai EX Magnezone was at a sole tier 1 spot for a very long time. Well, that's going to be a problem because you have a big target on your back. If you're going to be the most prevalent played deck, in a way, Pokemon is set up to self-balance itself through the weakness typing, where essentially the game, in a way, could devolve into a game of rock, paper, scissors, where you're playing the right matchup at the right time. And of course, you could build your deck to help mitigate a poor matchup. So with that said, Darkrai EX, even though it's at tier 2, you can see it at 100 power level. It is a 14% of the total pie of tournament topping decks. Let's hop into this final deck. Are you ready? Boom. This is it. And it's so important. You have to understand this. Darkrai EX with Magnezone only uses dark energy, nothing else. If you put in the Druddigon, it's going to try to put in water and fire. If you put in the Magnezone, it's going to try to put in lightning. And that's even after you build your deck completely. Let's say you remove a card, put in a card, it's going to keep on trying to force the non-dark energy in your deck. And you know what's going to happen when you queue up and you find out you have more than dark energy? You should just hit the surrender button, leave the duel, and fix your deck list. You don't want to be annoyed by that. So the Magneton is going to self-supply 3 to 4 lightning energy for your Magnezone, and then you're going to be able to whip out the Magnezone for that 110 damage, which against a water Pokemon will be 130, as the Darkrai will be the only Pokemon you're supplying with your energy, continually giving it the dark energy on the bench, chipping away 20 damage at a time. And as I stated earlier, the Darkrai 20 damage plus the Magnezone 130 damage if the Pokemon is weak to lightning, that is a perfect one-shot for against a deck like Palkia, which, I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. Palkia should have been the best deck of this set. I think it is a letdown. I think Magnezone is kind of cheesy. Colorless? Really? No lightning in the deck? Really? I think this is the first big major oversight of Pokemon Pocket in terms of balancing. Yeah, I'm not saying that like you have to balance Palkia to be better, but I mean, you look at everything else. If everything's playing how it should be, where Magnezone is not completely colorless, that is when Palkia would be the sole best deck. So, you know, you let me know if you're upset by that too or not, or, you know, it just is what it is. And of course, as your Magneton is continually volt charging and build up the lightning energy and you're chipping away with 20 damage, what do you have on the main spot? You have a Druddigon. Druddigon is going to be at 100 health, chipping away 20 damage to any Pokemon that dares to attack into it. And it's not just the Magnezone that could deal 110 damage being good. Do not forget the Darkrai does have an ability. It deals 80 damage for 3 energy. It's not a lot of damage, but that's 100 damage to a psychic type Pokemon like Mewtwo. Another reason why Mewtwo is not doing too hot right now. Now, in this deck, the Leaf is a really good card because what you need to do is you got to pull that Druddigon out when you're ready to continually be swinging with the Magnezone. And another thing that's really unbalanced with Magnezone is it's not an EX Pokemon. So it's a colorless 110 damage, 140 health, fully self-supplied energy Pokemon through the Magneton that gives your opponent just a single 1 prize point for defeating it. And guess what happens when you defeat the first Magnezone? There's probably another Magneton building up its energy again. So back-to-back 2 Magnezones in a row, you beat both of them, you still don't win the duel, and then what's going to happen in the best case scenario against this deck, likely their final Pokemon's going to be Darkrai, smacking you for that Dark Prism for game GG, which, you know, because of Nightmare Aura, it is essentially 100 damage. We also have sometimes using Giant Capes, sometimes Pokemon Communication. The more popular support card over Communication, Giant Cape, and Sabrina will be the Cyrus. And yeah, I know it's a Pokemon tool. I'm just going to call it a support card. Is that okay? That's not a big deal, right? And then Kangaskhan is another option, a more aggressive tank if you do not want to be sitting on your Druddigon. So we've been seeing a lot of success with that, though the Druddigon is definitely more popular. You could just play 1 Druddigon and 1 Kangaskhan. That is a good option. Now, let's see this madness. We have its top and everything. I don't know what else there's to say. Let's go to the top decks page. Look at some first place deck lists there. How about that? So the last 7 days, first place, Darkrai. Holy moly. 61 player event, first place. Hopefully I'm zoomed in enough where you could see it. There you go. Another first place like that. First place, first place, first place, first place. And the craziest performance that really told the whole world how broken this deck was a very large tournament. Let's type in the tournament here. It's called the Hooglandia and Spragle Open. 960 player event, $1,500, where the deck out of nowhere, a lot of people didn't know about this, got first place. Look at that, Druddigon, 1 Kangaskhan, didn't just get first place, it also got second place. Didn't just get second place, it also got third place. Didn't just get third place, it also got the entirety of the top 4. And it doesn't stop there. Even though there's a Darkrai Weezing deck here and an Aerodactyl deck, the rest of the top 8 is even more Darkrai-Magnezone. So top 6 out of top 8 being a single deck type in any card game, no matter what you're playing, in a prestigious $1,500, 1,000 player event, that is too crazy to ignore. And from that great performance, I think that is why a deck like Marshadow has started to rise in power to try to counter the EX Magnezone deck. So let's read this description from Bella VGC. With the new set Darkrai performing very well, we already read that. Darkrai EX with Magnezone only uses dark energy. Yeah, okay, that's actually my tip. Oh, it was repeated. That's fine. Not a big deal. I'll fix that later. And it's got an actual negative win rate against a deck like Darkrai Greninja. So the base way to play this deck, the main theorized way, while it's not the best deck against the entire meta, it still ended up being the best deck to play against the best deck, which does that make it the best deck then? It sadly doesn't, because once you start playing against the non-Darkrai EX Magnezone decks, you're not going to be doing as well as you would be if you were to instead be playing the Darkrai EX Magnezone deck itself. Does that make sense? How you could win a matchup against the best deck but still not be the best deck? Hopefully that makes sense. Super clapping the Mewtwo, clapping up Dialga, clapping up Weavile, clapping another Dialga, and also clapping up Palkia. So you may be thinking right now, DK, something's missing. Well, yeah, you're right. Why we didn't even talk about Dialga? Dialga is a huge disappointment, I would say, in terms of being super top tier. Now, we could argue that Magnezone is forcing a lot of decks to be overshadowed unfairly, and I think you would be right to a degree. So, you know, other decks they more carefully sat down with to ensure proper balance are just not going to be as good as something unfair like Magnezone. So here are the honorable mentions where we will start with the Dialga decks, because we've got some write-ups for them. So Bella VGC, top tier, thank you very much for these write-ups. Dialga is currently a very strong deck, largely due to its effective use of Mew. Dialga enables early energy ramp while also taking advantage of Mew's genome hacking against decks like Palkia. So let me say this real quick. I think Dialga, even though it's not as good right now as the other decks, I think it is the most resilient strategy to be really broken in the future. And why so? Well, if this is making a card like Mew so good, then what's stopping Dialga from making an even better, broken, overpowered, power-crept Pokemon in the future to replace the spot of Mew? So let's read Dialga specifically. Why is it making something like Mew so good? Let's read this. Dialga EX is not about itself. It's about how good your bench Pokemon is. Because at 150 health basic, you do want to open this ideal, of course. You have the 2 Metal Energy Metallic Turbo. We're going to take 2 Metal Energy from your energy zone and attach it to one of your bench Pokemon as you also deal 30 damage. That's high pressure while building up a big Pokemon on the bench. Now, Mew is not a metal Pokemon, so what's going on? Well, the Mew does not need metal energy. Genome hacking, fully colorless for the ability to copy something like, ooh, are you ready for this copy? When I got this copied against me, I was like, what the? The Palkia EX ability, Dimensional Storm, dealing 150 damage, has the downside of detaching 3 of your water energy from this Pokemon. Well, because the Mew does not have water energy on the genome hacking, we copy the ability to its fullest, meaning we're going to deal 150 damage plus 20 to everything on the bench, but there's no water energy to detach, so you keep the full energy as you hack the ability of Palkia. I think that is nuts. I think we said something like that. Yeah, decks against Palkia without discarding any energy. Thank you. Additionally, Cyrus is a powerful tool in both variants, as Dialga's Metallic Turbo attack applies early chip damage. Yeah, very easily, I think Metallic Turbo could have dealt 20 damage, maybe even 10 damage, possibly even 0 damage and still be considered a great ability. So this is why I say that an ability like this is future-proof. It's going to have great future viability. Hopefully, this card specifically does not get power crept. And then if your opponent's not able to knock out your Dialga as you're building up your bench, instead of being forced to pull out your Dialga with a leaf, you could just keep the Dialga on field as you build up for a heavy impact to start dealing 100 damage. You are really setting your opponent on a timer to have to take this Dialga out early, and then when they do, they will be rewarded with that 2 points for being an EX, but then hopefully if your Pokemon is too good, well, I should say hopefully for them, the Dialga user, if your Pokemon is good enough to take out a Dialga, then it's probably good enough to use a genome hacking on to then finish you off, as the Dialga hopefully maybe knocked out one of your Pokemon as you were trying to take it out. And the variants here, let's talk about that. Yanmega is more of an anti-meta build. It can one-shot Darkrai and Weavile, making it a strong counter in the current environment. So we have the Yanmega here, similar to the Mew. Instead of genome hacking a powerful ability, why don't you just have a powerful ability right away? Now, of course, you do have to evolve into the Yanmega, but it being colorless, so you could supply it with the metal energy, and you're good to go with that 120 air slash. So Yanmega plus the Mew, great ways to play this deck. And let's see if it's got any cool tops here. We got a second place top right here. Let's see. So just like that, 1 Mew, 2 Yanmega, and now let's look at the other version of Dialga. This is with the Melmetal. Melmetal is surprisingly viable due to Giant Cape. Interesting. What's going on here? Which significantly increases its effective HP. It can survive even 150 damage attacks, especially since Giovanni is currently not being played. Yeah, Giovanni has really fallen off, I think, in favor for the Cyrus. So let's see this. Instead of Yanmega, you know, we still could be using Mew. Let's read this. Melmetal, an actual metal Pokemon. So we have Heavy Impact for 120. You use your Metallic Turbo ability just twice, and you're now ready to get Melmetaling. Hard Coat. This takes 20 less damage from all attacks. Interesting. And then when you have the Giant Cape, it's going to be, let's say, 150 health. They hit you with the 150 attack, and then it's going to instead be 130 damage. And hopefully you're not weak to, you know, a fire attack happening onto you, as metal does melt. Yes, right? Now, we also are a little bit of Dawn up in here. We got Potion, Rocky Helmet, just random supporter cards. It looks like the Giant Cape is one of the more important cards alongside, you know, Cyrus's high usage. A lot of people using it at 1 or none, not playing 2. The Giant Cape is 18% are not using it, so all the way up there. Let's see what else is good here. Let's look at a specific deck list, maybe a top 4. And then we're going to be quicker with the other honorable mentions, so I don't make this video too long, yes? So there you go, looking quite similar to the deck type breakdown. Let's now go back on over to the tier list, and I'm just going to open all of these decks up. I'm just closing a bunch of tabs. Let's do it. Open, 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 open. All right, Pachirisu. As we saw, solo Pachirisu. It's probably better to play this in Pikachu, but if you want to be a mad lad, why not play it in its own deck where you're guaranteed to open it up and deal additional damage when you have a Pokemon tool attached? Where a card like this, probably similar to Dialga, is only going to get better in the future as better cards come out that will help support this, like better Pokemon tools. So we already showed you the first place deck list here. It is, again, first place looking just like that. If you can see on the highlighter, zoom in. And let's read real quick. Pachirisu decks are split between 18 tools, or 18 support trainer cards, that is, and the Pikachu variants. Both decks are struggling against the current high damage meta. This version will utilize early Sabrina to force the opponent into a switch and discarding the energy, either switching out and losing momentum or accepting an early knockout. So they're going to lose the energy because they got to swap out. Additionally, when the opponent switches, Cyrus ensures that the second target is easily knocked out. So being able to max out on Cyrus and Sabrina, that is going to be incredibly annoying. Okay, so it's an annoying deck to play with. Let's move on to another version. We have Galad EX. Galad has yet to see any competitive play, unfortunately. Despite that, it's got some tournament tops. Or, you know, we got a first place tournament here. It's not that bad. It's being played alongside Lucario here. We have Galad EX. Let's read specifically what it does on the deck breakdown, though. So the Galad EX, it is a stage 2. And because it's stage 2, we expect it to be a lot better, as it is hard to evolve into a stage 2, right? Now, Energized Blade for 70 plus damage, as we are 170 health. 170 health is a lot of health. This is only 2 fighting energy. This will deal 20 more damage for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. And, okay, you know, if they're weak, 20 more, and then each attach energy, 20 more, and then each Lucario you have on the bench, an additional 20 more, continually, endlessly stacking 20 more damage onto that base 70 damage attack. What else did I really say? We have paired with Lucario featuring its combination was recently submitted after achieving a 5-win streak. So thank you, Bella VGC. With Lucario's ability, Gallade could deal 70 base, plus 60 from the opponent having 3 energy, plus 20 from a Lucario boost for an amazing 150 damage total. That's what you're going to need to know for how much you have to do that much damage. And then if you have another Lucario, you can get it up to 170 to play through a Giant Cape. So thank you again. Let's move on to another one. We have Skarmory. What's there to say about Skarmory? You attach the Pokemon tool and you smack your opponent down with metal arms. 80 base health, no evolution required. A single metallic energy, metal energy, I should say. And this will deal 50 damage for 1 energy if we have a Pokemon tool attached to it. The most popular tool being a Giant Cape. Now, what's unfortunate is you can't wear a cape and a helmet at the same time for some reason. I would totally think that would be reasonable, right? That makes sense. Logic, yes, no. But you can't do that in Pokemon Pocket. And maybe, tell me if you like this idea. I don't know how it works in the Pokemon TCG. Why am I not allowed to replace the tool on my Pokemon? What if I want to get rid of my cape for a giant, for a Rocky helmet? Maybe, I don't know. You tell me if you like that idea, or maybe it should just be as is. So Skarmory is being supplemented by a potential Bastiodon. Ooh, okay. Let's see. What's so good about the Bastiodon? Guarded Grill. If any Pokemon is done, any damage is done to this Pokemon by attacks, flip a coin. If heads, you take 100 less damage from that attack, and then you get head banging. All right, so you only need that one energy on the Skarmory, so you could build up some energy on the bench for something else for fun, either it being the Bastiodon, the Mew EX, or a self-supplying Magneton you can get out earlier if you want to start putting energy onto it. Let's see any crazy tops here. We got a top 4. We could look at the top 4 down. We'll zoom in a bunch of them. How about that? So here's a top 4 with the Bastiodon. Here's a top 16 Bastiodon. Let's see. How about a deck not playing Bastiodon? Bastiodon, not playing Bastiodon. Yeah, Bastiodon seems to be the way. Here's with the Magneton Mew, Magneton Mew, Magneton Mew, again Magneton Mew, and Magneton Mew. So Magneton Mew or the Bastiodon. Let's move on to the Articuno. Arcanine EX functions similar to Sinistcha. Okay, Gia, what the heck? You put the wrong... Gia put the description on the wrong one. That was her. She's fired. Don't worry, we're going to deal with that later. Now, Articuno. What's interesting about this is similar to the Pachirisu. It is a solo Pokemon, ideally, the main way to play it. You're going to play 18 trainer cards plus the Articuno. And why did this deck just get better? Well, because the trainer cards got better. And, I failed to mention Misty and the other deck types. If you're a water deck, you could always get lucky and roll a jackpot, as flipping coins could get you to early activate a powerful ability like Blizzard on your very first turn. Where in the Pokemon TCG, you're not allowed to attack. But in Pokemon Pocket, if you somehow have a way to give it the energy to attack, then you are allowed to get attacking. So Articuno, 80 damage Blizzard, 10 to everything on the bench. And let's see, first place, wow. A lot of random first place wins with this. I can't imagine losing to this deck. That is hilarious. So there you go. First place of this, 18 trainer cards plus Articuno. And then we have a random Aerodactyl in here. Okay, 17 trainer cards first place of a 200-player event. That is wild. The Itachi Cup. Oh, my Jesus. And then another Aerodactyl. Okay, Aerodactyl with the old Ambers. Why not? With the Primeval Law, your opponents can't play any Pokemon from their hand to evolve their active Pokemon. Okay, let's move on to Garchomp. Garchomp is, here it is. Garchomp's a disappointment for me because there was supposed to be an EX Garchomp. I say supposed to because where is it? Garchomp's one of my favorite Pokemon, and comboed up with Cynthia, it would deal 50 more damage. So let's read what we have here from Bella VGC. Garchomp is currently struggling in the meta due to too many top decks having high HP and the ability to one-shot it. It could be fairly compared to its counterpart Dragonite, which faces similar challenges. Rip, when are we going to have Dragonite EX and Garchomp EX? Make it happen. There are 2 Garchomp decks that reach tops at tournaments. We have the Mew variation and the Druddigon variation. Mew will be a secondary attacker but struggles, and Druddigon will help tank hits for Garchomp. Let's just read the Garchomp and we can pretty much move on. Yes, it's got the Reckless Shearing, which you must discard a card, but you get to then draw a card every single turn. It has no weakness because it is a dragon, but it only has 140 base health for a stage 2 evolution and only does 100 damage, which of course is 150 damage when comboed up with a Cynthia. Let's see the tournament tops here. We have a top 4 at least. That's quite surprising. So, yep, comboed up with Greninja, Druddigon to tank, and then draw. The draw could help you get into Greninja early. So that's definitely something. Tank with Druddigon as you continually draw, and not using the Pokemon communication ability to help get into Greninja early. Okay, pretty cool. And then we have the Darkrai EX Wheezing. This is not going to be with Magnezone. This is not going to be a Greninja. Instead of chipping away for an additional 20 damage with the Greninja, you're going to be tanking with the Wheezing as you gas leak for 10 damage every single turn. which essentially equates to that 20 damage where the Greninja could hit the bench, but this is only a stage 1 evolution. You could also pull it back with Koga. So this is a slower way to do some damage, but you could also start tackling. But, you know, you're going to have to, instead of putting a Dark Energy on the EX, you're going to give up 20 damage for a turn just to deal an additional 10 with the tackle. But then it's forever dealing that 30 damage every turn. So it does have that benefit. But if the opponent's tanking with a Druddigon, do you really want to be tackling? You're pretty much not going to be. So all I'm thinking is I'm sitting there with the Weezing, and they have a Druddigon, and then they're building up their Magnezone, getting ready to one-shot my Weezing, or they're chipping me away with my Greninja. It just turns out to not be as good. So there you go, Darkrai EX, Spirit Tomb, and Rocky Helmet, or the Druddigon to chip away their entire field, and then powered up with, comboed up with the power of Darkrai EX. Let's see if it has any tournament tops. Now, despite my scathing review, we have a first place tournament top here. What the 250 players? There we go. Druddigon and Weezing. So maybe this deck is better than I have been letting on. And you can let me know in the comments and say, hey, DK, you don't know, but you are sleeping on Weezing. Theoretically, you think it's not good, but when you actually play it, it claps up everyone with that gas leak. So I want to hear it. Let's see. Aerodactyl. Win rate versus top decks here. Mewtwo, okay, but Mewtwo's not really played. All right, great. Aerodactyl, what is going on here? The Primeval Law, this deck recently got boosted by the Lucario. So it's, again, I try to talk about this in Yu-Gi-Oh! You want to be careful about playing a worse version of an existing deck. And that's what this kind of looks like. If we already have a good Marshadow Hitmonlee deck, why are we going to play with Aerodactyl or even play with Lucario? Even though, I mean, Lucario is one of the coolest looking Pokemon ever. I love it. But it looks like they're just holding back Marshadow from its true greatness. It's just a lot more efficient to not be holding it down with other nonsense like this. And, I don't mean to be offensive if you're a big fan of Aerodactyl. So please don't get offended. We have Head Smash for 130 in this deck list. We'll look at a top 4 deck right here. Looking good. Aerodactyl with the Rampardos. We're not playing Marshadow in this variant. Okay, Hitmonlee. Cool. Quite interesting. Let's see what else we have here. Greninja. Greninja by itself, not comboed up with other decks, is going to be pretty much comboed up with Magnezone. So what's funny here is instead of putting peanut butter, Greninja in every deck, and jelly into every other deck, why don't we combine the peanut butter and jelly together and you have a Greninja deck? Yes? And again, we're going to have the Pokemon Engine system on the website soon where it's going to show very easily that it's going to have the Greninja icon and the Magnezone icon and then be searchable and all that good stuff. Don't worry, soon to be coming. Any recent top decks to be noteworthy here? Second place from here, Greninja, second place. This one's not using the Magnezone. Magnezone is just the most popular way to play it. Instead, we're using a regular Articuno, which is quite interesting. Okay, sure. And let's see, there's no Magnezone here recently. Wow, did they start dropping the Magnezone? Here we go, we have Magnezone there. So it goes back and forth, and you could filter by what kind of version you want to be playing yourself. Let's see, I mean, it's only at 42%. The majority are not playing Magnezone is what I should be highlighting here. And let's see what else we have here. We saw that, we already talked about the Palkia. Infernape. I think this is kind of a disappointment, but it's also very interesting. This is a very smart deck. When I saw this in play, I was like, wow, did you just do a Yu-Gi-Oh combo? What the heck was that? Let's read this real quick. From Bella VGC, Infernape Giratina. The deck plays around with a lot of pivots and benefiting as a cheap attacker. So the cheap attack is going to be 2 fire energy for a flare blitz at 140, and we have a 0 retreat cost, so we could pull ourselves back right away if we need to. Making good use of Giratina's switch into Infernape, and then using Dawn. So what is that? That's the Pokemon combo, the Yu-Gi-Oh combo, I should say. So Levitate. What's going to happen is you put an energy onto the Giratina, and it's got 120 health basic Pokemon. That is massive. This thing's basically a Snorlax. It's got a triple retreat cost, but That doesn't matter because its special ability, it levitates if you at least have 1 energy on it. So what's going to happen is you're going to retreat this for free. If it has an energy, it has no retreat cost. And with that 1 energy you put onto the Giratina, you then use the Dawn. Pull the energy off the Giratina to then put it onto the Infernape. And then there you go. You're going to get Infernape in for 140 damage. I've also, when I played against this deck, I saw people playing the Spiritomb, which looks like it's not that popularly played. But the theory would be, I would say, is you Spiritomb like crazy, chip away everyone to get in the 140 damage range, and then after the Spiritomb dies, you then tank with the Giratina, and then before the Giratina dies, you're going to pull it back, then Dawn the energy onto the Infernape, and get blasted. Now, you don't want to Dawn early, because the issue with Infernape is you have to discard all of your fire energy from this Pokemon. So your first attack, 140, you're now down to 0. Next turn, Energy Zone, put a fire energy, then Dawn, put your second energy from the Giratina onto the Infernape for a back-to-back Flare Blitz for 280 damage total. And then hopefully through the Spiritomb, if you're even playing that variant, even though it's not a popular way to play it, you then have enough damage to win. I feel like this deck will struggle to get that 3rd point, right? It seems kind of awkward. We got a combo for 2 Flare Blitz, and then beyond that, we're going to maybe be struggling for gas a bit because you can't overcharge this Pokemon like every other Pokemon. You have to discard every single fire energy that is on this Pokemon after an attack resolves. And then we got the communication, helps set up all the combo pieces. So, you know, the combo being in here, I thought that was quite intriguing. Nice little gimmick, but that gimmick's not even in this version. Just we have an Arcanine, Moltres with the Infernape getting 2nd place of an event. And let's look at the variants that do have it. You can see a top 4 right here. As I said, Spiritomb and Giratina in that version. And then we have a 1 Giratina here, the top 16. A top 4 without it, playing Rotom instead. And you know, a lot of people are dropping the Giratina despite how cool that combo is. Cool doesn't mean it's going to be the best way. Wow, surprisingly, a lot of people, the most recent versions are in fact just dropping it. Yeah, the usage is way down, but initially that's how people were playing it. And then we have the final deck, Luxray. What's there to say about this? I don't know, because I have not really seen this in play. We got Volkner, so we're forcing the use of Volkner. We're going to choose our Electivire or Luxray to attach 2 lightning energy from your discard pile to that Pokemon. And the Luxray is going to have a Volt Bolt for 3 lightning energy. Discard all your lightning energy from this Pokemon. Deal 120 damage to 1 of your opponent's Pokemon. So wherever it is, it can't hide from the Luxray. And then after discarding all your energy, as you're now at 0, you're going to Volkner, put 2 electric energy from the discard pile, and then put in energy from your energy zone. So right away, back to back, ideally, you're going to be using Luxray 3 times in a row, right? Initially, and then back-to-back Volkners, as you're going to have a total 360 damage to any Pokemon anywhere over 3 turns. Now, how are you doing that over 3 turns when it only has 130 base health? And also, it's a stage 2 evolution, so even summoning into this could be quite slow, giving your opponent a lot of time to build up their Pokemon. That's the issue with this deck. And then we have the Electivire, Exciting Voltage. If it has at least 2 extra energy, it's going to deal 80 more damage. So I guess the backup plan is you could Volkner, overcharge up your Electivire. I do like this idea of, this is such a cool concept of just supercharging your Pokemon. Just have them explode full of energy. That's what I'm thinking with the Electivire, the Art plus Volkner helping that happen. And let's see what happened here. 2nd place, kind of February 3rd, top 8. And sorry for the very long video. Let me know if you're okay with this, if we should not be looking at tier 4. If we just do tier 3 up, that could be fine. But if you enjoy the long video, then great. Thank you for watching this long. So this is 2nd place. And then we have a top 8, a random Farfetch D up in here. And now, beyond the honorable mentions, we have an honorable mentions, as we're very quickly now going to look at the 1st place deck list of anything we did not look at. Well, I think everyone we looked at is pretty much already here, right? Palkia Exeggutor got 1st place. Articuno, I guess there's nothing too spicy that is randomly winning. Now, at the end of the day, I want to encourage you to have fun with this game. I was reading someone saying that they're potentially upset. They're like, hey, I went in on Palkia because I thought it was the best. Now, the Darkrai EX Magnezone's the best. Like, should I quit the game? I went all in. No way, man. Palkia's still great. It's a casual, fun game. Have fun with it. And who knows what the future for Magnezone is? Maybe there will be some kind of weird ban list where they hit that card, maybe limit Magnezone to 1. I don't know. And if there's not, again, it doesn't matter. We're not going to get upset every time new Pokemon come out and make your other deck, like, let's say, Mewtwo, obsolete, unfortunately. It's just the way of a card game. So what I want to encourage you is on this top deck page, scroll to the bottom. All right, do that with me. Let's scroll to the bottom. So huge shout out to the Chad playing Sandslash. Who is that? Retro, shout out to you, my friend. Shout out to the Chad playing Regigigas. Yep. Shout out to the Mew EX lad. Shout out to the Marowak, to the Lake Trio, to the Gengar EX, to the Centiskorch, to the Blaine, to the Venusaur EX, Machamp EX, Koga, Dragonite Brock, Togekiss, Wigglytuff, Miss Magius, Blastoise EX. Do you see any of them putting their head down in shame, avoiding playing any of these fun decks? No way. They're having fun. They are accepting the challenge. They are standing up to the plate and having a good time with whatever they want. And so your job now is going to be to whip out your licky tongue. Yes, that's the Pokemon. Gia did not believe me that this card existed. Licky it up and combo it up with Dialga. Yeah, so there you go. Have fun with something like that. And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. We are out.